3,000 years ago, the Vecthari archivists achieved what we believe to be the pinnacle of administrative perfection. We are crystalline beings, our bodies formed from living data lattices that store and process information across quantum substrates. Every interaction, every transaction, every regulation that governs galactic commerce flows through our networks. We don't just manage bureaucracy, we are bureaucracy made manifest in crystalline form. Bureaucratic Nexus, our crowning achievement, sits at the intersection of 43 major trade routes and controls the permit systems for 40% of all galactic commerce. Nothing moves without documentation. Nothing happens without approval. Nothing exists without a record. For 3 millennia, this system functioned with 99.9997% accuracy. We took pride in that number. We celebrated that number. That number meant order in a chaotic universe. Then, 200 years ago, the Shadow Collective appeared, and our perfect number began to crack. At first, we didn't notice. The Shadow Collective were masters of infiltration, possessing stealth technology that bent light around their forms, quantum scramblers that made them invisible to sensors, and neural dampeners that prevented telepathic detection. They stole trade secrets from the Morthani Consortium. They extracted military specifications from the Kaldrith Empire. They copied diplomatic communications from the Centauri Commonwealth. All without leaving a trace, without triggering a single alarm. By the time we understood the scope of the breach, they'd been operating for 17 years. We responded as any logical civilization would. We upgraded our security. Quantum encryption replaced standard protocols. Artificial intelligence sentries monitored every corridor with pattern recognition algorithms that could detect a displaced air molecule. Probability fields surrounded sensitive areas, alerting us to statistically unlikely events. Biometric verification became mandatory at every checkpoint. Retinal scans, DNA sequencing, thermal signatures, brainwave patterns, temporal displacement analysis. The thefts continued. We added more: gravitational sensors, tachyon detectors, reality anchor pylons that prevented dimensional shifting, consciousness tracking networks that monitored every thinking being within our facilities. We hired the Velkoth Mindseers, telepaths who could detect hostile intent from 3 levels away. We employed the Drathan Hounds, creatures bred specifically to hunt that which cannot be seen. The Shadow Collective adapted to everything. For 200 years, they bled us dry while we watched, helpless behind our walls of perfect technology. Then the humans arrived. They were young, these humans, only 200 years into their membership of the galactic community, having emerged from their isolated arm of the galaxy with relatively modest technology and an unremarkable stellar empire. What they lacked in advanced systems, they made up for in sheer enthusiasm. They joined every organization, worked every job, learned every language. Within a decade, you could find humans on almost any planet, doing almost anything. And we noticed something peculiar. Humans gravitated toward the jobs that other species avoided. Administrative positions, data entry, compliance monitoring, documentation review, filing, processing. The soul-crushing, mind-numbing work that kept civilizations running but earned no glory. Why would you want to review permit applications? I once asked a human named David, who'd taken a position in our Stellar Commerce Authorization Department. He shrugged, a gesture I'd learned indicated casual indifference. Someone's got to do it. Plus, I like knowing how things work. You learn a lot when you read the paperwork. We thought it was charming, in a strange way. The humans who wore their identification badges on lanyards around their necks, who carried clipboards and tablets everywhere, who always seemed to be walking purposefully from one office to another with arms full of documents. They blended into the administrative background of galactic civilization, unremarkable and unremarked upon. We had no idea what we were seeing. In the 183rd year of the Shadow Collective's campaign against galactic security, they achieved their greatest theft yet, the Nexus Prime encryption keys. I was present in the Central Archive when we discovered the breach. Senior Archivist Melthara's crystalline form flashed distress crimson as she processed the audit logs. Impossible, her resonance carried across the chamber. The keys were in Vault Prime, 7 levels underground, quantum-locked, AI guarded, probability shielded. There is no conceivable way. But they were gone. The master encryption keys that governed access to 40% of galactic trade documentation, military communications, and financial networks. In the wrong hands, the keys could crash economies, reveal military positions, expose state secrets across 100 worlds. The galaxy panicked. The Morthani deployed their new phase shift detectors, devices that could theoretically spot anything moving between dimensional frequencies. The Kaldrith installed consciousness anchors that would trap the mind of any infiltrator, preventing escape even if their body remained hidden. The Centauri created temporal lock chambers that existed in frozen time bubbles, accessible only during precisely calculated microsecond windows. All of these solutions were implemented, all of them integrated into our existing security architecture. Our facilities became fortresses of overlapping technological deterrence, layers upon layers of detection and prevention systems that no known stealth technology could possibly defeat. 3 months later, the Shadow Collective stole the Kaldrith Imperial Naval Deployment schedule from a vault protected by all of the above, plus a Velkoth Mindseer and 2 Drathan Hounds. The council meeting that followed lasted 6 days. We need specialists, argued Councillor Trenvek, beings who think like infiltrators, who understand stealth at an instinctive level. We've hired the best, Melthara countered. The Velkoth can read minds, the Drathan can hunt anything, what more? Not hunters, interrupted a voice from the observer's gallery. You need someone who understands the security itself, someone who can think like both the infiltrator and the guard. We turned to identify the speaker, a human female, middle-aged by their standards, wearing what we'd learned was called a business suit and carrying, of course, a clipboard. Her identification badge read, Dr. Sarah Chen, Independent Security Consultant. The Shadow Collective isn't defeating your technology, she continued, walking down to the council floor with a confidence that should have been alarming. No one simply walked onto the council floor during session. Yet our guards stood aside and we let her. They're defeating your thinking. You keep adding more sensors, more locks, more AI. But security isn't about technology, it's about psychology. Preposterous, Trenvek resonated. Our security systems are based on quantum mechanics, probability mathematics, and consciousness theory. There is no psychology involved. Dr. Chen smiled. It was not a comforting expression. Counselors, I'd like to make you an offer. Give me 48 hours. If I can break into Vault Prime, your most secure facility, and retrieve a specific item you designate, you'll grant me authority to implement alternative security measures. If I fail, I'll leave the Nexus and never return. The chamber erupted in incredulous resonance. Vault Prime was 7 levels underground, protected by every security measure we'd accumulated over 2 centuries of fighting the Shadow Collective. Quantum locks, AI sentries, probability fields, consciousness trackers, telepaths, and reality anchors. The vault existed in a state of quantum superposition until directly observed by authorized personnel. Even if someone could somehow bypass the technology, the Velkoth Mindseer would detect their intent 3 chambers away. Impossible, Melthara stated. You possess no stealth technology, no quantum camouflage, no dimensional shifting capabilities. You're not even telepathically shielded. I don't need any of that, Dr. Chen replied. I just need this. She held up her clipboard. Do we have an agreement? We agreed, how could we not? The human would fail, obviously, but the demonstration might provide useful data on our security protocols. We placed a physical data crystal containing meaningless information inside Vault Prime and informed Dr. Chen of its location and description. She nodded, made a note on her clipboard, and left. 47 hours and 32 minutes later, she returned to the council chamber and placed the data crystal on the floor before us. The security logs showed exactly how she'd done it, or rather, they showed exactly what had happened, though none of us could process what we were seeing. Marcus Webb entered the bureaucratic Nexus Central facility at 0900 Standard Galactic Time on a Tuesday morning. He wore a bright orange high-visibility vest over a simple gray jumpsuit. He carried a clipboard in one hand and a tool bag in the other. His identification badge, hanging from a lanyard around his neck, identified him as a maintenance contractor, though the badge number didn't match any registered vendor in our system. The security footage showed him approaching the first checkpoint, where a Morthani guard stood before a biometric scanner. "Morning," Webb said cheerfully. "Here to check the atmospheric regulators. Got a report of some pressure fluctuations in the lower levels." The Morthani guard checked his console. "I don't see any scheduled maintenance." Webb consulted his clipboard, frowning slightly. "Really? Should be right there. Work order number." He squinted at the paper. 774 Delta Romeo. Atmospheric systems, levels 5 through 7. "One moment." The guard checked again, more carefully this time. There was, of course, no such work order, but Webb stood there, clipboard in hand, looking mildly concerned but not worried. The stance of someone who'd done this job 1,000 times and knew there was probably just some administrative mix-up. "Probably a clerical error," Webb offered helpfully. "You know how the scheduling department is. But I'm here now, and if there really is a pressure issue down there, better I check it than wait for the paperwork to catch up, right?" The Morthani guard hesitated for exactly 2.3 seconds. Then he waved Webb through. "Go ahead, but check in with Central Security when you get to level 5. "Will do, thanks." Webb nodded and walked through the biometric scanner, which immediately flagged him as unregistered. The guard overrode the alert. Level 2 featured quantum signature analysis, a system that created a unique identifier for every being based on their quantum state. Webb walked straight through, was flagged as an unknown, and when the Caldrith guard questioned him, he held up his clipboard and said, "Maintenance, atmospheric regulators. Guard at level 1 cleared me through." The Caldrith guard checked with level 1. The Morthani confirmed he'd sent a maintenance worker down. The Caldrith let him pass. Level 3 employed a Velkoth mindseer specifically to detect hostile intent. Webb walked past while genuinely thinking about atmospheric regulators and whether the calibration tools in his bag were sufficient for the job. The mindseer detected no hostile thoughts because Webb wasn't thinking hostile thoughts. He was thinking about pressure valves and air circulation patterns and whether he'd have time for lunch after this inspection. Level 4 had AI sentries with pattern recognition algorithms designed to detect anomalous behavior. Webb's behavior was not anomalous. He walked like someone who was supposed to be there, moved with the purposeful but unhurried pace of a contractor on a routine job, and stopped once to examine an actual air vent, making notes on his clipboard about its condition. Level 5 required DNA verification. Webb provided a sample. The system flagged it as unrecognized. The human guard at this checkpoint, one of 3 humans working security in the facility, looked at Webb's vest, his clipboard, his tool bag, and his expression of mild bureaucratic patience. "Maintenance contractor?" the guard asked. "Atmospheric regulators," Webb confirmed. "Got flagged down from level 1. Probably just a calibration drift, but you know the regulations. Better safe than sorry." The human guard glanced at his console, saw the DNA mismatch, and made a decision that our post-incident analysis still cannot fully explain. He manually overrode the system. "Yeah, the contractor database is always out of date. Go ahead." Level 6 featured probability field sensors that detected statistically unlikely events. A maintenance contractor being in the facility during a routine check was not statistically unlikely. The system remained silent. Level 7 was Vault Prime itself. The door could only be opened by authorized personnel whose quantum signature, DNA, retinal pattern, and brainwave signature all matched archived records. A Draythan hound lay before the entrance, bred to hunt infiltrators through scent, thermal signature, and something the Draythan called wrongness perception. Webb approached the final guard, a Centauri with 40 years of security experience. "Hey there," he said. "Atmospheric regulators need to check the environmental systems in the vault chamber itself. The pressure differential between level 6 and 7 is reading 0.03 psi off standard. which doesn't sound like much, but over time that can stress the seals. The Centauri guard stared at him. No one enters Vault Prime without authorization from the Council itself. Right, absolutely, Webb agreed. But the environmental system isn't technically in the vault, it's in the surrounding chamber. I don't need to access the actual storage units, just the atmospheric processors. Should only take about 20 minutes. He checked his clipboard. If you want to call it in and get authorization, that's totally fine. I can wait. Though if there is a seal stress issue and it's not addressed, the Council might have questions about why scheduled maintenance was delayed. The Centauri's compound eyes flickered with what our analysis indicated was uncertainty. The human wasn't asking to access the vault contents. He was asking to check environmental systems, which were technically due for routine maintenance, even if this specific human wasn't technically authorized to perform it. And if there was a problem, and this contractor was turned away, and the problem got worse. I will accompany you, the Centauri decided. You will not approach the storage units. Of course not, Webb agreed. Just need to access the atmospheric processors. The Centauri opened Vault Prime. Webb entered, walked to the actual atmospheric processing unit mounted on the far wall, and spent 18 minutes performing what appeared to be a genuine calibration check. He made notes on his clipboard. He adjusted several settings. He nodded with satisfaction. Then, as he packed his tools, he stumbled slightly, steadied himself against a storage pedestal, and apologized for his clumsiness. 4 hours later, he exited the facility the same way he'd entered, with his vest, his clipboard, and his tool bag. Security footage showed him waving goodbye to several guards who'd come to recognize him during his time in the building. The data crystal was in his tool bag. He'd palmed it during his stumble, a maneuver so smooth that even reviewing the footage at slow speed, we almost missed it. Dr. Chen played us the complete security recording during the Emergency Council session. We watched in crystalline horror as every single security measure functioned perfectly and was circumvented anyway. Not through technology, but through something far more disturbing: confidence, clipboard, and the simple human assumption that someone wearing a high-visibility vest and asking to check the atmospheric regulators was probably supposed to be there. He defeated quantum encryption. Trenvex resonance was barely coherent. He walked past a MINDSER. He didn't defeat anything, Dr. Chen corrected. Your guards defeated your security for him because he looked like he belonged there, because he had the right props, vest, clipboard, badge, because he spoke the language of routine maintenance and bureaucratic procedure, because he was visible, confident, and boring. This is absurd, Malthara protested. Our guards are trained professionals. They wouldn't simply. They would and they did, Dr. Chen interrupted. Because this is how humans think. We don't see security systems. We see people who operate security systems, and people can be convinced, redirected, socially engineered. You've been defending against technology for 200 years. The Shadow Collective has probably been using similar methods the whole time, and you never noticed because you were looking at sensors instead of guards. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Can you stop them? I asked finally. Dr. Chen smiled that unsettling smile again. Counselors, I can do better than that. I can teach you how to do it yourselves. What followed over the next 6 months made me understand, truly understand, what it means to fear a species not for their weapons, but for their minds. The Galactic Council granted Dr. Chen authority to form a human-led counter-infiltration task force. Within 2 weeks, she'd recruited 47 humans, each with what she called relevant experience. We didn't understand what that meant until we saw them work. The first operation was a test: infiltrate the Morthani Consortium's primary research facility and retrieve specific data without triggering alarms. The facility had been hardened against Shadow Collective intrusion with every technology available: quantum locks, AI monitoring, telepathic sweeps, probability sensors, the full array. A human woman named Angela Martinez walked in at 14:00 carrying a tablet and wearing a blue polo shirt with an embroidered logo reading Net Systems Consulting. She told the front desk she was there for the quarterly network infrastructure assessment and asked which conference room she should use. No such assessment was scheduled, but the receptionist, flustered and uncertain, assumed it was a clerical error and directed her to conference room 7. Martinez spent 3 hours wandering the facility, periodically stopping to scan network ports with her tablet, chatting pleasantly with researchers about bandwidth issues, and slowly mapping the entire security system. She never accessed the target data herself. Instead, she identified which administrator had access, learned his schedule through casual conversation with his assistant. "Oh, I'll need to check his office network port. What time does he usually take lunch?" and entered his office while he was gone. She didn't crack his computer. She simply used her tablet to photograph the login credentials he'd written on a sticky note under his keyboard. A violation of security protocol, but one that 64% of knowledge workers across all species apparently commit. She returned 3 days later for a follow-up assessment, used the credentials to access the system, downloaded the target data, and left. Total time inside the facility across both visits, 5 hours, 17 minutes. Number of alarms triggered, 0. Number of security protocols that failed, 0. Number of guards who questioned her presence, 3, all of whom accepted her explanation about network assessments. The Morthani were horrified. We were horrified. Dr. Chen was pleased. "This is what humans call social engineering," she explained to the council. "Angela didn't break your security. She convinced your people to open it for her. That's the difference between an intrusion and an authorized visit, paperwork and confidence." The operations escalated. A human named James Park infiltrated a Caldrith military base by wearing a delivery uniform and carrying boxes labeled "Office Supplies Urgent." He walked past armed guards, biometric scanners, and AI sentries because he looked like every delivery person they'd seen 1,000 times before and who questions the office supply delivery. A human named Lisa Okonkwo accessed a Centauri government archive by scheduling an appointment to discuss digitization consulting services. Once inside, she excused herself to use the facilities, took a wrong turn accidentally, and photographed classified documents through open office doors while appearing to be lost and slightly embarrassed. A human named Robert Chen, no relation to Dr. Sarah Chen, though they found this amusing, entered a corporate headquarters by joining a group of employees returning from lunch break, confidently walking through the door they held open while chatting on his phone about a meeting he was supposedly late for. No one questioned him because he moved like he belonged. But the operation that truly demonstrated the scope of what humans could do came in the 4th month of the program. Jennifer Park, again, no relation to James Park, humans apparently have limited surname diversity, volunteered to infiltrate the Shadow Collective itself. We thought this was insane. The Shadow Collective operated from hidden bases with security specifically designed to prevent infiltration. They knew all the technological countermeasures because they'd been circumventing them for 200 years. Sending a human to walk in with a clipboard seemed like certain death. Jennifer wore a blue maintenance jumpsuit with a fake company logo, carried a tablet and a small toolbox, and approached the Shadow Collective's listening post on the mining station Keldrath 7. Intelligence suggested this was where they coordinated surveillance on Nexus communications, hidden in plain sight among the station's 40,000 inhabitants. She walked up to the door, not sneaking, not hiding, just walking normally, and knocked. A collective operative answered, alert and suspicious. "Hi there," Jennifer said cheerfully. "Station maintenance. We've been getting noise complaints about the environmental systems in this sector. Something about a humming sound in the ventilation. I'm here to track down the source." The operative stared at her. "We filed no complaint." "No, it came from," Jennifer checked her tablet, "Unit 47B, that's 3 doors down. But the ventilation system is shared across the whole corridor, so I need to check all the units to isolate where the resonance is coming from." She offered an apologetic smile. "I know it's annoying. Won't take more than 10 minutes, unless you want me to skip your unit and risk the humming getting worse." The operative hesitated. This was clearly not a combat situation, just an annoying administrative interruption, the kind that happened on stations all the time, and if there was a ventilation issue. "Make it quick," the operative said, stepping aside. Jennifer entered a Shadow Collective base, pulled out a device that made a fish-looking scanning noises, walked slowly around the perimeter while appearing to trace the ventilation system, and casually photographed every piece of equipment, every operative, and every data terminal in the facility. She asked questions about when the noise was most noticeable, nodded sympathetically about how annoying maintenance issues could be, and promised to have engineering look into the resonance problem. 10 minutes later, she left with complete intelligence on the facility's operations, personnel, and current targets. The Shadow Collective never knew she'd been there until Galactic Security Forces raided the base 2 days later. Dr. Chen presented the footage to the Council with undisguised satisfaction. "This is what humans have been doing for thousands of years. We call it confidence schemes, social engineering, pretexting, impersonation. Your species invested in technology. Mine invested in understanding how people think, what makes them trust, what makes them obey, what makes them assume someone is authorized to be somewhere." "This is deeply disturbing," Malthara resonated. "Yes," Dr. Chen agreed. "It is, but it works. And now that you know it works, you have two options: hire us to stop the Shadow Collective, or watch them keep bleeding you dry while you add more useless sensors." The Council voted to expand the program. Over the next year, human infiltration teams systematically dismantled the Shadow Collective's operations across 40 systems. They didn't use advanced technology or overwhelming force. They used clipboards, high-visibility vests, fake uniforms, confident smiles, and an encyclopedic knowledge of what different bureaucratic roles were supposed to look and sound like. A human claiming to be a safety inspector walked into a collective weapons cache and left with complete documentation of their arsenal. A human wearing a contractor badge convinced guards to let him repair a communications array, which he then bugged with tracking devices. A human with a clipboard and an attitude of mild bureaucratic frustration talked her way past 3 security checkpoints because she claimed to be following up on an incident report that didn't exist, but the guards assumed must exist somewhere in the vast machinery of administrative process. The galaxy watched in mounting horror as humans proved that all our sophisticated security was fundamentally pointless if the guards simply opened the doors. When the Collective's primary command base was finally located, we expected a military assault. Instead, 6 humans walked in dressed as a facilities assessment team, claiming to be there for a routine safety inspection mandated by station regulations. They were inside for 4 hours before the Collective realized what was happening. By then, our actual military forces were surrounding the base, guided by detailed maps the humans had sketched while inspecting fire suppression systems. The Shadow Collective fell not to superior technology, but to superior social engineering. 200 years of successful infiltration, ended by humans with clipboards. That's when Director Elena Kovac, Dr. Chen's supervisor, released the document that changed everything. A complete social history of humanity, with emphasis on deception, infiltration, and confidence operations. I read all 47,000 pages. I wish I hadn't. Humans, we learned, have been running confidence schemes since before they had written language. Ancient human civilizations had con artists, grifters, charlatans, and mountebanks who made their living by convincing others to trust them. Medieval humans had tricksters elevated to the status of folk heroes. Renaissance humans had elaborate fraud schemes involving fake businesses and non-existent investments. By their industrial age, humans had fake inspectors who would show up at businesses claiming to represent government authorities, collect fines for imagined violations, and disappear. They had social engineers who could convince bank employees to hand over money just by calling on the telephone and claiming to be managers. They had hackers who broke into computer systems not through sophisticated code, but by calling technical support and pretending to be authorized users who'd forgotten their passwords. Human warfare included espionage operations where agents would assume false identities for years, building trust and authority before extracting secrets. Human corporations employed competitive intelligence specialists who would attend conferences, befriend employees, and extract confidential information through casual conversation. Human intelligence agencies had entire departments dedicated to creating believable false documentation, badges, uniforms, credentials, all designed to make infiltrators look legitimate. Document included case studies. One human spy had worked inside an enemy government for 11 years simply by forging credentials and acting like he belonged there. Another had convinced a secure facility to grant him access to classified materials by claiming to be a security auditor checking their protocols. A third had walked into corporate headquarters, asked where the IT department was, and been given directions and temporary access because he looked like an IT guy. There were thousands of examples spanning 10,000 years of recorded human history. Salesmen who convinced people to buy worthless products, cult leaders who convinced followers to give up their possessions, political operatives who spread misinformation disguised as legitimate news, phone scammers who convinced elderly humans to transfer life savings to strangers, email phishers who impersonated banks and harvested credentials from millions. Humans had been weaponizing trust since before they understood metallurgy. "You evolved this way," I accused Director Kovac during a private meeting. "Your species is fundamentally deceptive." She shook her head. "We evolved to be social, to cooperate in large groups of strangers. That requires trust, but trust creates vulnerability, and some humans learn to exploit that vulnerability. We've been in an arms race with ourselves for millennia, building social trust, then learning to fake it, then learning to detect fakes, then learning to fake better. Your species built technology to keep secrets. Mine built psychology to extract them." "Why would you show us this?" I demanded. "Now we know what you're capable of. Now we'll never trust you." Kovac's expression was somber, because you need to understand what you're dealing with. The Shadow Collective has been using similar techniques for 200 years. Now that you know this approach exists, you'll see it everywhere. You'll question every contractor, every inspector, every delivery person. You'll add, verify authorization protocols that actually check instead of just assuming. You'll train guards to be suspicious of confidence rather than impressed by it. "So you've made the galaxy paranoid." "We've made the galaxy aware," she corrected. "There's a difference. And yes, you'll never fully trust us again, but you'll hire us anyway because we're the only ones who truly understand how this works. We know what questions to ask, what details to verify, what confident behaviors to distrust, because we've been doing this to each other for 10,000 years." She was right, of course. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. The Shadow Collective's remnants were hunted down over the following months. Human operatives infiltrated every suspected cell, sometimes by walking in the front door with clipboards, sometimes by joining as new recruits, and then providing intelligence from the inside. The Collective's operational security, which had defeated technological surveillance for centuries, crumbled against humans who understood that the weakest link in any security chain was the person who decided whether to ask questions or just let someone pass. The bureaucratic nexus implemented new security protocols. Not new technology, we had enough of that. New human protocols. Every facility now has compliance officers who are actually human security specialists trained to spot social engineering. They wander the facilities with clipboards and tablets, looking exactly like the infiltrators they're meant to catch, because only someone who knows the disguise can spot someone else wearing it. Every guard receives training on what Dr. Chen calls pretextual awareness, recognizing when someone's explanation for being somewhere is too smooth, too prepared, too reasonable. We learn to be suspicious of confidence rather than reassured by it. Every checkpoint now has two-person verification, with the second person's entire job being to question the first person's decision to allow access. "Why are you letting them through?" has become the most common question in our facilities, and the answer, "because they said they're supposed to be here," is no longer acceptable. We installed what humans call social tripwires, deliberate administrative gaps that legitimate workers would know about but infiltrators wouldn't. If a maintenance contractor doesn't ask about the required escort protocol, they're probably not a real contractor. If a delivery person doesn't know which entrance they're supposed to use, they're probably not making a real delivery. And we hired humans, hundreds of them, thousands eventually, because the uncomfortable truth is that humans are the best at detecting human social engineering techniques. And once you know this attack vector exists, you can't unknow it. Every species now trains their security personnel in human infiltration methodologies, but humans remain the specialists. The galaxy is more secure now, also more paranoid. Both are probably necessary. I still see Marcus Webb occasionally. He works as a legitimate security consultant now, helping facilities identify vulnerabilities in their human interaction protocols. He still carries a clipboard. He still wears high-visibility vests sometimes. The difference is that now, when he approaches a checkpoint and says he's there to check the atmospheric regulators, the guards actually verify whether that's true. Usually it is, sometimes it isn't, he's testing them. Ivecthari archivists, who once prided themselves on perfect documentation and technological security, now understand that the most sophisticated lock in the galaxy is worthless if the guard decides to open the door. We've spent 3,000 years building systems to verify identity, encrypt data, and detect intrusion. It took humans 6 months to teach us that security isn't about technology, it's about psychology. Our new security motto, written by Dr. Chen herself, is displayed at every checkpoint in the bureaucratic nexus. Trust but verify, especially when they have a clipboard. The humans find this amusing. They made t-shirts with the slogan. Many of them wear these t-shirts to work in our security departments, often while carrying clipboards, creating a recursive loop of irony that I still don't fully understand. But I understand this. The galaxy learned what humans are truly capable of when we gave them authority over our security. Not their technology, they had adequate but unremarkable technology. Not their physical capabilities, they're fragile compared to most species. Their capability is understanding that authority doesn't exist in credentials or biometric scans or quantum signatures. Authority exists in the moment when someone decides whether to question you or wave you through. And humans have spent 10,000 years learning to make people choose, wave you through. We defeated the Shadow Collective. We secured the bureaucratic nexus. We protected galactic commerce and communication. And we did it by embracing the species that turned fake it till you make it into an evolutionary strategy. The most terrifying part isn't what humans did to the Shadow Collective. It's knowing that every human walking through our facilities, the legitimate security officers, the real compliance inspectors, the authorized maintenance contractors, could, if they chose, walk into any secure location in the galaxy simply by wearing the right vest, carrying the right clipboard, and projecting the right amount of casual confidence. They don't, of course. They're our allies, our employees, our friends. We trust them. But we verify. Always. Always we verify. Because the humans taught us that the gap between looks authorized and is authorized is where infiltrators live. And no species in galactic history has explored the gap more thoroughly, more creatively, or more successfully than the species that turned social engineering into an art form. The Shadow Collective operated for 200 years using stealth technology we couldn't detect. Humans ended them in 6 months using psychology we never even considered. That's the real horror, the real lesson, the real legacy of human counterintelligence operations. The most effective invisibility isn't bending light or shifting dimensions. It's making people choose not to see you. And humans are very, very good at being overlooked while standing in plain sight, wearing orange vests, holding clipboards, and asking if anyone's noticed that humming sound in the ventilation system. We let them in, we always let them in. Now we know better. Mostly, I think.